Hey, how's it going? It is Wednesday, April 22nd, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. Now, today we'll get some coronavirus updates, also the interesting direction Sweden has taken in fighting the coronavirus, and learning to take responsibility and not lean so much on the people around you. So, everyone, how are you guys doing? It's already the middle of the week, and thank you for doing it together with us on the Morning Star Drive. And make sure to catch the Sunday edition with Brianna Ruiz, constantly getting more and more feedback about our interview, so be sure to watch that one. And next week, I'll be interviewing a filmmaker and screenwriter from Singapore, Jonathan Chu. Now, let's get into the featured artist of the day. The featured artist of the day is from Studio 316, which is from Jew Star, and she's in collaboration with Mariah Henry, and the song is called Until the End. The second song is coming from Japan. It's from Rising Japan Radio. It's an original song by our members there, and the song is called Love Letter R. So let's start this show off with some great music, so everyone just sit back and relax.
Want for my heart to be firm and unswayed, not making his heart be upset. The fortress of my heart should open for one. Yes, only for him should my heart be undone. But then I was weak and my enemies won when I disregarded his heart. But I will surely not give up until it is complete. Regardless of how long it takes, I'll not accept defeat. For whether it takes my 4 million days, or forever I'll work in a myriad of ways to the end which exists, and I know I will raise my level and it will be joy. I just want to make myself really hate you, for only then am I quite safe. In weakness, my enemies still can break through and wreak havoc more on my faith. My work is so tiny when seen next to his, that failure embarrasses me, and it is so frustrating failing to live as he says. My spiritual nature is weak, but I will surely not give up until it is complete. Regardless of how long it takes, I'll not accept defeat. Whether it takes my 4 million days, or forever I'll work in a myriad of ways, and which exists, and I know I will raise my level, and it will be joy. This time I will do it, I promised I would. No longer will partially do. I'll make myself how I've been taught that I should, 300% with the truth. The end, it is strong, it is perfect, complete. And when I am flawless and sin obsolete, then I will be worthy, and then we can meet forever, and I will not fall. I will surely not give up until it is complete. Regardless of how long it takes, I'll not accept defeat. But whether it takes my life 4 million days, or forever I'll work in a myriad of ways to the end which exists, and I know I will raise my level, and it will be joy. I will surely not give up until it is complete.
例えば誰かが太陽のように僕らを照らして生きる力をいつも届けてくれていて、あなたから届くラブレター一つ一つの言葉に溢れる想いと優しい気持ちが心の奥に染み渡る。会いたかったよ、愛しているよ、一人きり人生迷ってる時に誰かを通して呼んでくれたのはあなたなんだよ。こんなにも涙溢れるのはずっと心の奥で待っていたのがあなたなんだよ。気づけたことが出会えたことがただ嬉しくて、今まで歩んだすべてを捨てて私と共に歩もう。あなたの言葉通りに頑張ることで心が清く変わってく。でも苦しくて負けそうになってそれが正しいと分かっていながらあなたを選べずに行えなくてもがいてたんだよ。そんな時教えてくれた励ましてくれた愛してみなさい。感じられるかいつでもそばに私がいると言ってくれたから戻りたくない虚しく生きたの頃あなたとの出会いで生きてゆく答えを見つけたよ。だからあなたの言葉をください。僕は歌うんだよ、あなたの祈りを永遠に輝くその言葉を大切なあなたに捧ぐ愛の贈り物さゆこう私と共に
And that was Love Letter. And it's very interesting how they spelled Love Letter. The L is capital for love. The letter is capital, and also the last letter R is capital too. So that was Love Letter from RJR, Rising Japan Radio. And also that very first song we heard, what was it? It was from Studio 316. That's from Star collaborating with Mariah Henry, and that song was called Until the End. I hope you guys enjoyed those two songs. We're going to go straight into our coronavirus updates, and there's a couple things going on. The cases in the world is roughly about 2.5 million now, with almost 170,000 deaths. We're looking at the U.S. is hitting about 800,000 cases with 42,000 deaths, but like we know, it's not a very high mortality rate at the moment. Spain and Italy both slowing down a lot, and surprisingly, France is slowing down a lot too. Spain is, they hit the 200,000 mark and with 21,000 deaths. Italy's 181,000 with 24,000 deaths, and France has hit the 20,000 death mark, so they're at 155,000 with 20,000 deaths. And of course, the UK, the fastest growing in Europe at the moment, is probably the new hotspot there. 125,000 cases with 17,000 deaths, and the highest mortality rate is over 13%. So that's something that we have to keep an eye on. Interesting thing is, like, the countries that are growing the most right now out of the countries that are over 100,000 is basically the US and the UK. They're both growing at around 4%. The rest of the countries are like 1 to 3%, or not even 3. It's like 1 to 2%. Like France now. Like France we thought was going to be a really major hotspot, but their case growth is about 2% right now. So it went down a lot, surprisingly. Maybe they're flattening out, or maybe it's just a one-day thing. But it seems like they're slowing down. Of course, Italy and Spain are slowing down also. And like I said, UK and US, both of them are going up plus 4%. Now, of the up-and-coming countries, excuse me, the countries that are growing the most and like at a very fast rate is Russia at 12%. Turkey's growing at a very fast rate. But another country that's growing really fast, which is really shocking, but it's not too bad, is Singapore. Singapore's at like... the growth rate, not the mortality, just the cases, is 14%. But both, like Singapore, what the death rate is? The mortality rate there is only 0.12%. It's like 11 deaths out of like 9,000. It's really small. And one of the things that we see is a lot of these hotspots, these outbreaks in the country, they're mainly happening to younger people who are working. They're not the elderly over there. So it seems that the elderly is being taken care of quite well. So even though it's growing and there's, the rate of growth of the cases is 14%, but it's still not too bad. It's still not bad. Like it's been 2-3 days in a row. It's probably gonna hit 3 days in a row where they're gonna have over 1,000 cases in a day, which is huge for a country of only like 4.2 million people. But the great thing is the mortality rate's super low, like beyond, like lower than any other country. Like what I've seen at 9,000 cases. So that's something very interesting. And Singapore's already decided to extend their, they call it the circuit breaker, or their like partial lockdown. And that's until June 1st. So it's going for at least another month, and at least another month and a week. So looks like Singapore is really locking down over there. Malaysia it seems to be doing really well. They're not growing very fast. I think yesterday the number of cases they grew was like 57. And their deaths are still under 100, like 85, 86. It's really low. So it looks like things are getting under control. And I think the peak was a lot earlier than we thought, because, things are slowing down now. So I'm really hoping that by the time it hits the end of this month, the lockdown will kind of ease out, and people will start to be able to do some type of like at least exercise or something, because I'm dying to exercise. I hope that, this is kind of interesting. But the thing I want to bring up now is what's happening in Sweden. Sweden is like one of the only countries that is not locking down. They're not locking down at all. Like, it's basically up to the citizens. Streets are busy, businesses are operating, schools are open, and basically the government is recommending and telling people about social distancing, and people are just acting sensibly. Yeah. So the only people in Sweden, the only people locking down are the elderly that are very prone to this disease, to death, and also the vulnerable, like those with pre-existing conditions. But everyone else is out there. So basically, if you lock down everything, then society is basically not working, and then the healthcare system is not going to work either. So they're kind of going for that herd immunity, right? They want to bring the virus through the healthy population, because for the healthy population, most of them are not going to die. Most of the people that are dying are the people with pre-existing conditions and the elderly. So all the healthy people are out, children are out, everyone's out, and it's so far it actually doesn't look that bad. Like, people were like kind of getting really I don't know if they're getting angry about it, but people on the outside are kind of like, oh, guys, you're playing chess with the virus. But reality is, like, I was listening to one of the health experts. He basically said that, technically speaking, no one has full information. It basically means that everyone is playing chess with the virus, right? It's not just Sweden, because no one really knows what the right thing to do is. It's basically they're trying their best and seeing what happens. And of course, I believe a couple of weeks ago there was like this big uptick in cases and some deaths also, because right now Sweden's at over 15,000 with 1,700 deaths, right? And they're it's pretty high. That's like 11.52%, but it's not getting any worse. And it seems like things are working off pretty well. And I was looking at this like, wow, this might be what we're going to see in most countries later, right? There's this Danish political scientist, and he's someone who talks a lot about, like, he's very visionary, and he talks a lot about climate control, saving the climate and stuff. But he brings some pretty good points that the good things of what Sweden is doing. He's like, you can't really, the point of us making these adjustments is, it's not about, it's really sad if we, imagine we do all this and we break our entire economy for one death. Like, would that be worth it? And the answer is no, it's not worth one death. And I know it sounds like we're like comparing like death compared to the economy. But I talked about this before in the podcast, and when the economy goes down and unemployment goes up, depression goes up, suicide goes up, spousal abuse goes up, divorce rates go up, all these things go up. And they said in America, just America alone, for every percentage point the unemployment rate goes up, 10,000 people die. 10,000, right? So we have to think to ourselves is, if we're going to save one person, but the percentage rate goes up 1 point and 10,000 people die, that kind of doesn't make any sense, right? So that's why it's this political scientist, his name is like Bjorn Lomborg. And he basically says, you can't save everyone, but you have to realize that there's a trade-off you have to make. You could destroy the entire economy, but but then you're going to save 10 people? Like, is that worth it? So it's like the example he gave was, if you really want to save every single person, then you drop the speed limit on the highways down to 5 kilometers and no one would die. But they say for every 5 kilometers that for every 5 to 10 kilometers you raise the speed limit, more people die. Why? Because the accidents are more critical. Like, there might not be more accidents, but the accidents themselves are more serious, so more people are dying. It might sound like an uncomfortable thing, but he says it's kind of a trade-off is necessary. You have to realize, if we close down an economy, and then like right now in America, it went like the unemployment rate went up to like 20%, which is like 15 to 16% up. So what's 15, 16% times 10,000? The question is it worth it or not? So if you go too hard on the lockdown, it's going to hurt a lot of people. Which means that you have to, a lot of people have to think about the middle ground of accepting that there's going to be deaths in the short term. But long term, it's not going to be as many in the end. So people have to think about saving lives. And it's a point that he brought up. It's a very valid point, right? He's a global economist, political scientist, and he says, yeah, it's to think about trading off lives for the economy, but you're not really doing that. It's lives for lives, because that makes other people die in different ways, right? Whether it's suicide or whether it's depression or anything else like that. But right now, Sweden looks like they're under control, and everyone's out except for the elderly and those with pre-existing conditions, the people who are very vulnerable to it, right? Sweden is accepting more deaths right now for less deaths in the future, and they allow the people to make their own decision on it, right? And for Sweden, it looks like it's kind of working out. And if you look at the long run too, there's way less economic damage, right? So if you lock down, think about this, how crazy this would be. Because there's a possibility of a second wave, like already like Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, they're all going, and China, they're all going through second waves right now. Like, isn't it kind of crazy? Like, if you do a full lockdown, you open it up, and then you have to lock down, then you have to ask people to lock down completely again. And then a third wave comes, you ask them to lock down again. Do you really think people would want to do it? Like, I don't think people, like, even in America right now, people are protesting. They don't want to be inside, right? So when you look at it, it is something, that's why it takes so much wisdom to be a leader. Listen to all sides. Yeah, like, how many lives did you save? Let's just say, now, if you saved 1 million lives, that's a different story, right? Completely different. If you saved 1 million lives, if you save even like say 500,000 lives, that's huge. 400,000, that's huge, because it's a huge amount of people that you're saving, right? But people have to really think about this, because we're not even going to be seeing a vaccine for how long? Probably not until next year. Vaccines are being tested now, but we don't even know. There's no 100% success rate for a vaccine. So some people say we could be in this for the next 18 months, which is crazy if we're going to be in lockdown like this. Yeah, we have to figure out better ways. And Sweden is trying the way that no one else is trying. And a lot of people were kind of like, oh no, this is too dangerous. But when you look at it now, it looks okay so far. It looks pretty good actually so far. And if we realize this, I think this might be where all the other countries are going to go, because locking down your entire economy, just the ramifications is so huge. So I do suggest that you guys take a look at what Sweden is doing. Sweden is surprisingly doing something really amazing. They took the risk, and it's not that bad, to be honest, at this moment, right? It's not that bad. They're not like quite at like UK rates, and their healthcare system is not like collapsing. They're actually okay right now. So I think that's something that we can look into even for the future. And it's something that we learn all the time in the messages. You can't look at just one thing. You have to look at 2, 3, 4 things in order for you to be, really wise and have a high IQ. Okay, so I hope that is something that's very interesting for you guys to hear about the coronavirus. We're going to move on to some praise songs, because we want to praise, especially this week, right? So we're gonna sing a couple songs together. Hopefully you can sing it while you're in your homes, or while you're exercising or cleaning. The first song we're going to hear is called "I've Come Back, I've Run," and the second song will be "Fulfillment of Hope." So everyone, let's praise together.
I'll come back, I will surely come. I'll return back to my hometown, to God's heavenly temple. This God promised the Spirit to promise me, and as they said, I'll surely come back. I have run for heaven's will, and today for the will. I have run once again. running once again today. Onwards I've run, and as the body of God, moved by the Holy Spirit, on her wings I flew. I have run endlessly, living in providence. I've lived for the will. I've lived for heaven's will. God and the Holy Spirit looked at me. From heaven they looked at me, and together they ran by my side. Ever brilliant, they have run and run right by my side, so filled with joy, until the sun set, till the moon rose and the stars shone deep into the night. God and the Holy Spirit looked at me. From heaven they looked at me, and together they ran by my side. Ever brilliant, they have run and run right by my side, so filled with joy, until the sun set, till the moon rose and the stars shone deep into the night.
Some people wait, hoping for what they expect could be. Those kind of people know a shadow of heaven's perfect joy. Even though hope may be burning in their hearts, what they're expecting will never come true. All they gain is the joy within their hearts. Such are the people who keep hoping the Lord will come. They feel heaven only within their heart and thoughts. We have received the Lord, we have fulfilled our hope. This is not a dream, our hope is real. Now we really gain heaven in both our bodies and spirits, genuine joy. 1,000 years, we will rejoice, we will celebrate. We fulfill eternal love. We have fulfilled our hope. Others haven't fulfilled theirs yet. Our joy is heaven, theirs is earth. What we have gained can't compare. Know this and be thankful each day. Sing it up for glory. With all your heart, will and your life. This is the best life, joyful and meaningful. Love doesn't leave regret. We have fulfilled our hope. Others haven't fulfilled theirs yet. Our joy is heaven, theirs is earth. What we have gained can't compare. Know this and be thankful each day. Sing it up for glory. With all your heart, will and your life. This is the best life, joyful and meaningful. Love doesn't leave regrets. Sing it up for glory. With all your heart, will and your life. This is the best life, joyful and meaningful. Love doesn't leave regrets. Sing it up for glory. With all your heart, will and your life. This is the best life, joyful and meaningful. Love doesn't leave regrets. Love doesn't leave regrets. Love doesn't leave regrets.
And that's the fulfillment of hope. And of course, the first one is I've come and I've run. So I hope that you guys enjoyed those two praise songs. And I hope that you guys actually sang together too. And that is going to move us over to today's word study. Now, this week's message, it was especially yesterday's Tuesday morning message. And one of the things that was really inspiring was when the message was like, you have to know the value of yourself, you have to know your existence, and you have to know your purpose. And there are great people that God has chosen since your ancestors, right? And I was looking at that like, wow, like that's really inspiring. Like, you are great people that God has chosen since your ancestors, so you have to know the value of yourself, your existence, and what your purpose is. And one of the things that I was thinking to myself is, when we know who we are and we know how great we can be, one of the things I noticed kind of even with myself too, especially when I was first growing up in Providence, and what I noticed that I talked a little bit about this before about overprotecting, but I noticed that sometimes it feels like everyone is trained, right? Like every little thing is reported. Like every little thing, or you have to ask for permission for every small thing. Like I find, like sometimes I'll ask, like even leaders, like, wow, they ask about that, and then their answer's like, oh yeah, they're so young. I'm like, really, like these people are university students, and these people have graduated university. They're in their careers, but they're like trained to ask even about the smallest things. And when I was thinking about it, one of the things that I realized is, when there's an over-reliance on other people around us, the one thing it does for us, it does stunt our growth. And the reason is because we don't gain responsibility. And I really think that responsibility is one of the biggest things that like everyone has to learn. Like it's not always like, it shouldn't always be, oh wait, let me ask my leader. Or the leader's like, hey, why aren't you asking me about this? Because there's a lot of things that they don't need to ask, right? And there's a lot of things you don't need to get permission for, right? Because honestly, most people won't know the full situation. You probably couldn't understand the full dynamics of what the situation is. And it actually becomes a hindrance in growth. And I'm not saying don't ask at all. Obviously, I'm not saying that. But if it's overdone, what happens, there's a complete reliance on something. And what the reason why this is not a good thing for us in our growth and knowing our value is we're basically giving our responsibility to someone else, so we'll never take the blame, which is not a good thing, because we need to learn to take the blame. We need to learn to be responsible and say, yes, that was my mistake. It was my fault. I'm sorry about this. I'll do better. But if you're always asking, someone else and asking permission, it's going to be like, oh, it's like, hey, why'd you do this? Oh, they told me I can do this. So what happens is we're easily able to shift the blame onto someone else where we never have to take responsibility, which means that if we continue on this road, what happens is members don't grow because they don't learn responsibility and everything is shifted to the leader. So there's the first problem. Second problem is leaders get stressed because, they think it's just a normal request and they're supposed to give permission for these small things that people should be doing on their own. But then we don't know the full situation, and then we tell them to do it like this, and then something bad happens, and then the blame comes on us. It's really stressing, right? And what we need to learn is we have to kind of break that bad cycle, and we can't look at these members like they're kids, but we have to look at them like they're adults, and they should be able to make this decision. Which means that if we look at the way God does things, God does things so perfectly. He gives the education, teaches them properly, and then allows them to make their own decisions. And how much does God allow them to make their own decisions? It's crazy. Why? Because technically speaking, even if God teaches you the fall, you can still do it. You can still fall. And it's not like God's going to sit there like put his hand there and say no, and then like push you out of the way. It's your choice. That's how we learn and we grow. Because in the end, it's our life, right? And people have to learn how to lead their own lives. Of course, it's not saying that do everything on your own, but we can see it right now. Like at this time of the lockdown, I talk to people, and a lot of people are struggling a lot because they're on their own now. They're on their own, no one to look after them, no one to tell them to do things. It's hard to wake up, it's hard to pray, it's hard to listen to the message properly, it's hard to focus. It's because a lot of the times our responsibility was shifted onto someone else, and I'm only really listening and focusing because that person's watching me, or I want to look good in front of people, or whatever it is, right? Now is the perfect time to kind of get a glimpse or a snapshot of where we are right now when it comes to our everyday individual faith. We need to learn responsibility. We need to be able to trust people and trust ourselves that yes, we got the education, we know what's right, and you know what? Sometimes we're going to make mistakes. But if someone trusts me and someone is always supporting me, then I'll be like, hey, I shouldn't have done this. Oh, why did I do this? And they say, it's okay, let's go, let's do it again. And we need to be able to stand on our own, right? We do. And this is a big thing about this is responsibility. Responsibility is that character that allows you to do well on your own, right? Just like, like I said, God doesn't do everything for you. Gives you the education. You got to do what's your responsibility, and it's yours, right? We can't allow our responsibility to always be pushed onto other people so that whenever something happens, you're like, oh, they told me I can do it. No, we got to take responsibility. We have to stand up, be responsible on our own. This is the only time we're actually going to stand up at the individual level, that even when a lockdown is here for 3 months, that we will still be okay in our faith. Then we'll be those that survive the test of time, not only when there's a large group, right? Not only when there's a big event, not only when, like, say, Pastor Joan comes for a tour, or a touring pastor comes. You'll stand the test of time. You'll survive. And that's why this time right now, I'm telling you guys, everyone, this is the perfect time for all of us to do what? To learn responsibility. Hey, you might have missed the first 10 pre-dawns. That's fine. I'm not saying that it's a good thing you did that, but you get an idea of, oh man, I really got to become more responsible. And then I have to look at myself and say, if I don't become responsible, how can I even hold a job if I'm not even responsible? In the end, we need people who are, like, people who really are responsible, who can do things well on their own, who can study the word on their own, can pray well on their own, work good by themselves, work good in groups. And this is, like I said, I think God has made this time right now, all the way till June 30th, right? We got another month and a half. Maybe, no, more. It's like 2 months and a bit. It's a long time and a short time at the same time. But it's a healthy amount of time for us to make ourselves become responsible, right? Yeah. And it's not about us going around trying to get permission for every little thing. Sometimes we just got to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. You got to make decisions. And you're going to make mistakes? Of course you will. You're going to make mistakes. Of course you will. You got to get back up. And that's how you learn responsibility. And this is when people become really strong. This is when people really become those that can stand firm, whether they're in a group or whether they're by themselves. So I really hope that all of us here too, for us who lead, we need to trust the people below us. I wouldn't say below, but trust the people that God has put in our stead. And those who are learning and growing, you have to want to grow. You got to want it. You got to want to grow. You got to want to be better. You got to want to be responsible, right? It's sad if you've been, like say if you've been in this history for like 10 years and you still have to get someone to kind of inspire you to go to service, right? It's like 10 years. By that time, we should have made ourselves. But even if we haven't, it's fine. Why? Because now is the time and the opportunity. We can't change the things from the past, right? You can't. But we can always change the things that are happening right now, right? So I hope that, all of us too, just really open ourselves up even more and kind of stand up for yourself. And remember, I didn't say everything. Of course, there's some things we don't know we should ask. But we shouldn't ask the same thing like 15 times because that means you're feigning your responsibility, which is like a Cain's personality, right? You're giving your responsibility to someone else, right? Oh, no, can I do this? Oh, they told me I can do it, so I did. That's why I did it. No, we have to be those that are much, much more stronger than we are now, and we can be. And like the message said on Tuesday morning, you've got to realize the value of yourself. You got to realize how great you've been picked since the time of your ancestors. Realize your existence and realize your purpose. So that's we're gonna move on to the song of choice, and I chose a song not because of the singer. The singer is actually this song is actually from Ariana Grande. It's called "Almost Is Never Enough," but I picked a cover, and it's from two singers from the Philippines. One is Daryl Ong, and the other one is Chloe Redondo, and they're gonna sing this song "Almost Is Never Enough." Just listen to the lyrics. It's really good. It's really, really good, and it's going to make you think of a lot of things, about the things, our responsibilities, and what we need to do. All right, so let's listen to "Almost Is Never Enough," covered by Daryl Ong and Chloe Redondo.
To blame it all on life. Maybe we just weren't right, but that's a lie. That's a lie, and we can deny it as much as we want, but in time our feelings will show. 'Cause sooner or later we'll wonder why we gave up. The truth is everyone knows. Almost is never enough. So close to being in love. If I would have known that you wanted me the way you wanted to, then maybe
If I could change the world overnight, there'd be no such thing as goodbye. And you'd be standing right where you were, and we get the chance we deserve. We try to deny it as much as we want, but in time our feelings will show. 'Cause sooner or later we wonder why we gave up. The truth is, almost is never enough.
It's never enough.
We're close to being enough. I would have known that you wanted me the way I wanted you. Maybe we wouldn't be two worlds apart, but right here in each other's arms.
And we almost knew what love was. But almost is never enough.
And that was Daryl Ong and Chloe Redondo, and that song was Almost Is Never Enough. Great song, great cover. Actually, to be honest, I've never heard the original song with Ariana Grande until like recently, like right before I did this this podcast. So it's really interesting. Like I don't know, I find these two much better, just in my mind. I'm not sure if it's a bias or not, but you know, that's just what I feel. But that brings us to one of the one of the best parts of the podcast, and this is the stories. And I know tons of people are like they're like texting me and stuff like, oh, it's so moving, I love this. So we're gonna go into the story time here. Okay, so this story comes from a member in Malaysia, and her name is Melissa Wu. Okay, and this is her testimony about her family and what God has done for them. Okay, so I'm going to go into the first person. So I care a lot about my family, you know, because when, you know, we always spent so much time together. Our parents gave us so much love, but they neglected their health. So when I came to this history, I didn't know how to repay them back. So I prayed for their health every day. This one time, my aunt gave my family this small mulberry tree. It was like really small and skinny. But my parents, they raised it with so much love and patience. And it grew so big, it even shocked the neighbors. Now my parents heard that this mulberry tree, mulberries are very healthy for you. So they decide to start eating the fruit. But as they're eating the fruit more and more, not much change in their health. But one day, my mom was inspired, and she decided to use the leaves to make a drink. And the result was so much greater. Both my parents got better with their hypertension, and my mom was fully healed of her diabetes. For myself, to be honest, I didn't really believe that this mulberry tree was really doing this. But then one day, in that week's message, the message talked about a mulberry tree. It talked about how healthy the tree is and the fruit. And then at that moment I realized, wow, that it was God that worked through the situation to heal my parents. I realized how much God is protecting my family. And I realized how much God is working in my life and protects my family. God really answered my prayers. And He has planned these things from the very beginning. What an inspiring story. I was really moved by it because, it's so easy to doubt that. Like, God, really? Did you really do this? Like, really, a mulberry tree? Is that what healed them? And then in that week's message, it talks about a mulberry tree. And it's basically God saying, yes, it was me. It was me. In your prayers that you did every day for your family, they work. It is real. And for myself, it really inspired me too. That, wow, I really have to pray for my, I was like, I should pray for my parents' health every day too. Maybe, someone might give them a mulberry tree or something like that. And they can be, because I know both my parents have hypertension also. So I really hope that this story also inspires you guys too, that you guys will realize how much God is working in your life and how much God really wants to not just protect you, but even your entire family. So I hope you guys really enjoyed today's podcast. I enjoyed it a lot. And, of course, for me, that always the stories at the end, they're so amazing. And these are like real stories from members. I really hope that you guys too, please send in your stories. More people are sending in their stories. Send in your stories, send in your comments, send in song requests, anything, right? And I just want to hear from you guys and just hear the parts of the podcast you really like and the things that you enjoy too, okay? So that brings us to the end of today's podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. Of course, it is Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow on Thursday, the 23rd. Everyone have a wonderful day.
I let it happen. Yeah. Believe in yourself and believe in somebody. Gotta believe in yourself.